Alan and I are at BSDCan this week, so we have a little shorter episode than usual, but we won't leave you in the dark and we won't leave you stranded this week without your regular BSD Now episode. So we recorded an interview with Michael W. Lucas, famous author and pulp tech writer. And this is pretty much going for over an hour. So this will be your weekly dose this week of BSD Now. BSD Now, episode 197, Relaying the Good News, recorded for the 7th of June 2017, because we're at BSDCan. Hi, I'm your host, Benedikt Reuschling.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And as I said, we're at BSDCan, having fun at this point, but we don't want to leave you with your weekly dose of BSD Now, so we have a little interview for you and a little smaller episode this time. But I think you will like it.
Yes,
there will be a nice,
Yeah, so we're at BSDCan. Hopefully you're there too. And if you are, make sure you came up and say hi to us. Although if you're watching this, you're probably not at BSDCan, or you watch it when you got home and it's a bit late. But anyway, yes, so we're at BSDCan. We hope to see you there. And if you didn't get to come, next week we will provide you with some...
reporting and
like a recap on how it went and make you feel special.
Yeah, you get all the latest news that we get from there just on this show. But for this week, we have a nice little extra episode recorded for you, so you won't get your, the shakes if you're not getting your weekly episode.
Yep. So, before we get to the interview, I have to remind you that this week's episode of BSD Now is brought to you by DigitalOcean,
which provides you the nicest cloud computing services that you can think about, because they have their little droplets for you that are SSD-based cloud servers in seconds that can be, just by a snip of a hand, basically, be deployed, and you can test all your favorite software that you are running in the cloud or want to run in the cloud. And they have a cool REST API where you can remotely control your droplet, as well as lightning-fast networking and block storage up to 16 terabytes for your droplet.
Per volume, so you could make two of those if you needed more somehow.
In case you need a little bit more than the regular people, then you can put in a lot of storage in your cloud providers in these DigitalOcean droplets.
Yeah, so when you sign up, make sure you use our coupon code, FreeBSDNow, and it'll add an extra $10 credit to your account, which will let you play with it that much more without having to spend more money.
Mm-hmm. And check out their different, server location that they have. So you can run it on, so they have a little map on the products page where you can click on the location and do a little speed test. And they have locations in San Francisco, Toronto, New York City, London, Amsterdam, Frankfurt, Bangalore, and Singapore. That should pretty much cover the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And wherever you go, in which data center, you will have the DigitalOcean support there, and stuff like load balancers and floating IPs and all the great stuff you can find on the DigitalOcean.com website.
Yeah. And, the best part is, even if you start with the small, inexpensive droplet, you can always resize up and down with just a quick restart.
We're joined this week by Michael W. Lucas, who has been on the show before. He's the popular pulp tech author of a lot of books and is joining us today for an update on his writing stuff. So, first of all, welcome back on the show. It's been a while.
Yes, it has. Thanks for having me back.
So tell us what you've been up to since the last time we interviewed you.
I've been writing books. Big surprise. I think the two tech books I've done since then have been the PAM book.
PAM Mastery, yeah.
PAM Mastery, and then the brand new HTTPD and RelayD book. That's on OpenBSD web services. Those are my latest tech books.
Cool. So I guess to get into that a little bit, can you tell us a bit about what Relay D is and what you can do with it?
Well, Relay D is basically a load balancer. It can either feed information into PF and update your firewall rules for you so requests go to specific hosts, or it can accept connections and mangle the requests and pass them off to web servers. See, OpenBSD's PF has a built-in load balancer. You can put in a PF table and distribute traffic between your various servers. The problem is this, in PF, it's a great example of fault-oblivious programming, because you can tell PF that there are 3 web servers and to distribute the traffic, but PF doesn't know if those servers are working or not. And basically what RelayD does is every 10 seconds, or however often you say, it queries the servers and determines if they're working or not, and if they should stay in the PF table. And it will add or remove servers to that table as need be. So you can do things like just check and see if the port is open, check and see if the, say if a test page is there. You can wrap a HTTP transaction in TLS and basically forcibly nail secure transport onto an old insecure protocol.
Sure.
And that's with a relay with that's with a redirect. RelayD also has this thing called relays where you can terminate the connection on the RelayD host, and it will create a new connection out to your servers, which lets you do things like application inspection. You can, let's say your company has a web application policy, and you can only use certain HTTP methods, or certain HTTP methods are not allowed, or perhaps you're not allowed to. I worked at a company once where the web applications were not allowed to use cookies.
Yeah.
So you can enforce this in RelayD. You can do things such as only HTTP gets are allowed, which I'd want to say nobody would ever do that, but I'm sure among your listeners somebody needs to do that. And that all kind of feeds into the HTTPD web server they've built, which is it's a very fast, very small, minimal web server. So basically, it's kind of what Nginx used to be when it first came out, and it had core functions, and before it had grown all the other features. And I'm really fond of HTTPD because it means I never have to debug an Apache configuration file again.
Oh yeah, that's a plus.
Yes, yeah. Yes, I can stand up a PHP web server in 10 lines of config.
Not bad.
And there's nothing there to break.
Good.
So that's the short answer.
Yeah, and the rest is in the whole book, I guess. There's much more to write about.
Oh, I guess the other thing,
there's gobs of things.
There's an interesting optimization in RelayD called socket splicing. So when you have RelayD terminate the connection and then it makes the forward connection onto the other service, unlike most application level load balancers like that, it doesn't have to shuffle the bytes back and forth. it can say, take this socket and this socket and just weld them together in the kernel. And OpenBSD's kernel will pass all the blocks back and forth, and RelayD doesn't have to do the work, making it higher performance.
Right. RelayD only does as much work as you absolutely require it to. My understanding is if you do a bunch of complicated filtering and rewriting of headers, it will have to do more work. Mm-hmm. But they've optimized the crap out of it. So I would put RelayD up against Cisco or F5 or anything like that with a smile.
Mm-hmm.
So this one is also available on other systems, or is it OpenBSD only?
Well, it's built on LibreSSL. So anywhere you have LibreSSL and PF, you can use it. This means OpenBSD, of course, but there's HardenBSD, TrueOS, both of those just out of the box. If you are building FreeBSD packages with LibreSSL, which a whole bunch of people are doing, you can use this as well. I'm sure that someday we're going to wind up with ports to some other operating systems. The first one that comes to mind is Debian's K FreeBSD.
Right.
They run PF. Yep. I wouldn't be shocked to see them do a port someday. So it's a pretty specific audience for this book, but people keep looking at OpenBSD as just a router, just a firewall. And no, there are actual applications that make it rather powerful.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure many people will check it out after this interview and also get the book, of course.
I can hope. And I do have to show off. I'm really proud of the cover. Let's see if I can get this in the camera. It's full wraparound. That's there's an old painting, Watson and the Shark. Mm-hmm. And this is that painting starring Puffy.
Of course.
So
that's nice.
Yeah. I like being able to do fun things like that in book covers.
Yeah, especially if you have access to a graphic artist who can do all these things on request.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I use Eddie Sharam, who has proven to be really flexible. I send him insane ideas, and he goes, yeah, whatever. I mean, I get a lot of compliments on the PAM book.
Yeah, it has these two side by side. So I'm still halfway through, but I'm using it while I'm implementing certain PAM policies. And so far, I'm pretty satisfied with the results.
Well, I'm glad. PAM is.
Yeah.
Oh. The world desperately needed the PAM book. Sadly, that meant I had to write it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had to bite the bullet on that one.
Yes. Yes. So I hope you all appreciate that. Anyway.
Yeah. What other books do you have in the pipeline?
Well, I'm working on a new Absolute FreeBSD. I was writing on the jails chapter when you guys called.
Oh, sorry to disturb your flow, but...
Well, yeah, I suppose since you set this up 2 weeks ago, I suppose I'll let it pass.
Yeah, this is...
And sorry?
Go ahead.
Yeah, this is good. This is going to be a bigger book.
Yes, this will be a bigger book. I'm doing it through No Starch Press, just like the earlier Absolute FreeBSD.
How old is the original one?
Horrible. The original is 10 years old. Or
yeah, it's I got that one.
There was a 2001 edition and a 2007 edition. So it's due.
Mm-hmm. I thought jails were going to be their own separate book.
Oh, they will. The reason I wrote 4 books on file systems is that they're prerequisites to jails.
Mm-hmm.
You have to really use jails, you have to understand ZFS. You have to, or there are many tricks you can do with jails that require understanding ZFS and Union FS. It looks like a lot of jail functionality is built on Vimage, which there are lots of books on PF out there. Unfortunately, if you're using Vimage, you have to use IPFW. And there is no book on IPFW.
There should be.
So
it's better.
Hint, hint.
Yes, I'm probably going to have to do a book on IPFW before I can write a book on jails.
Awesome. Although all my jails don't use vimage. I can do it all with the stock stuff.
Yes, yeah, many people can.
But they're
for
very a lot of cool
sophisticated
stuff you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I'm going to write a book on jails, I at least need to give a nod to the Vimage tricks.
Mm. Yeah, so this one will keep you occupied for the rest of the year, or is there a timeline?
I really, well, if everything went perfectly, I would have the book done. I would have the first draft finished before Euro BSDCan.
Oh,
we all know life is not going to go perfectly.
Yeah, that's true.
This is not going to happen.
Yeah, did you include recovery time from BSDCan in your scheduling?
That's an example of life going imperfectly.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. No, I figured.
Afterwards.
I figure a trip to Europe usually knocks me out for a week afterwards. Between, getting life back together and getting over jet lag and
The usual.
the usual. I don't know how you people who fly to other continents all the time survive.
Yeah.
I always hear that it's getting better with age, but I'm not sure I can make that determination right now.
I just turned 50. I'm pretty sure that those people are lying.
Yeah, they just want to keep us young folks off the planes.
Oh. Apparently I leaked the conspiracy.
Ah.
Is there anything else that you've been working on?
Let's see. I'm always planning.
Yes, you're a schemer.
I'm a schemer. I
3 kinds of nefarious.
Well, yes, but I try to make them all really yummy kinds of nefarious that people will pay me for. That's
Gelato
kind of how.
mastery.
If I did write a book on gelato, that would make gelato tax deductible.
I'm in.
Yeah. I think I may have to consider that. Oh, other things I'm working on, another crime thriller. Mm-hmm. I write fiction for fun because people buy it anyway.
Well, you said it helps you keep your words per minute rate up compared to writing just technical stuff, right?
Yes, if I write just technical stuff, I slowly grind to a halt.
Yeah, and balance yourself off.
Yes, the nonfiction pays a lot more. The fiction is a lot easier and faster to write. Because it seems that when you have to be factually correct, you slow down. Strange how that works.
Yeah. It's a certain level of precision needs time to get it right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
what are the just go ahead.
I think that's all I'm working on right now.
Okay. So what are the criteria you use to decide which different topics maybe deserve a mastery book in the future?
Well, there's a few different things. One is, can I write the book? There are topics that I'm sure could benefit from a short book, but I'm a sysadmin. I'm writing a short book on programming.
Right.
So can I write it? Is there a market for it? I do have to consider the money because, the Relay book here, I spent close to 6 months on that. And I don't know that, financially that the market is there for it to pay back the time. But, you never know what is going to sell, so I take my best guess. And if I wrote a book on Tarsnap, which is also a very narrow audience, and that did okay. So I figured I'd try this and see. Is it interesting? There are topics that simply that probably would be a good book, but they don't terribly interest me. NetSNMP. A lot of people use NetSNMP.
Mm-hmm.
It probably deserves a book. The world would probably benefit from the book. One day I might, if I'm stuck for ideas, I might write the book. But the topic doesn't really light a fire for me.
Right.
It doesn't make me say, oh, that would be cool. Because every time I go near SNMP, I wind up screaming in rage.
Right, yeah. Well, it might be part of a bigger book like monitoring or something. That's a small bit of that.
Yes. I've put bits about SNMP in other books. And yes, I would happily do that.
Mm.
And you can do nifty things. I've extended NetSNMP with shell scripts to wedge PF counters into it.
Oh.
Because you can add a MIB of your own and have it execute a shell script, which I had it run pfcatel -ss pipe to wc -l. So every 5 minutes, my mostly idle firewall boxes would have a sudden spike of processes and then go idle again. But I don't know that I could in good faith recommend people do that. It's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, I guess that's the other problem with writing technical books is it's, do what I say, not what I actually would do.
Yes. I have a certain higher standard that I try to hold myself to. I don't always hit that, but sometimes reality doesn't give us any good choices. We
Right.
just have a choice of awful.
How much oil? How much? Yeah.
Yes, and I really try to steer people then towards the least awful.
Yeah. So I guess a random question I have is, especially when writing technical stuff, how do you deal with you're trying to explain something and then you realize I now need to explain this whole other unrelated thing just to provide the background for this to make sense?
Well, that's when you go and you write 4 books about file systems.
By accident, yeah.
Yes, pretty much. You take a deep breath. You step back. You figure out what needs to be said. And you grit your teeth and do it. I don't know how many of your viewers are involved, or say they've started an open source project to do something that should be simple, And they have wound up needing to write all this supporting infrastructure just to do their simple little task. How hard could it be? And the answer is it could be a complete nightmare.
Yeah, it's almost a form of nerd sniping, right? It's like, I just want to do this little thing, but then I get down this other rabbit hole of why is this other thing that should just work not quite working the way I want it to? And then it's like, oh, I have to fix that. And then, oh, this led to this other thing. And then I'm working on the installer instead of converting all the config files in the base system to a consistent format.
Well, we'll look at FreeBSD's libarchive. It's a classic example of that. I believe his name is Tim, who's the... I'm not even going to try his last name. But he wanted to do something about FreeBSD's packaging system. And so he needed a library that could open and create archive formats. And he wound up completely re-implementing tar and zip and all of these other archive formats in a library and got nowhere on the packaging system.
Yeah, it's like, so libarchive is your life now. Have fun with that.
Yes. And now mind you, when BAPT did package-ng, and I'm going to digress for just a second here, never call anything ng.
Yes.
One day it won't be. Thank you. And all of BAPT's packaging stuff is built on libarchive. It was a necessary prerequisite. So and frankly, I love libarchive and all the tools that Tim has put on top of it.
Yes, we're currently badgering Tim to add the new Z standard compression algorithm to libarchive so that we can use it in package.
Okay. Tim, I'm sorry. We all love you.
Yes.
Yeah, it started small, but it became a whole bigger monster over the years.
So sometimes that happens in books. I'm looking for an example here. My PGP book, for example. I wanted to do an article, and it wound up being a book. You live with it. I truly believe that if we knew what we were getting into before we started anything, we wouldn't do anything. We would stay on the couch and watch Netflix forever. Because everything is hard.
Yeah. And the chat room points out that writing is nature's way of letting you know how sloppy your thinking is.
Yes. Clear writing is absolutely clear thinking. The good news is I can think about it, I can put it on paper, and then I can, throw away the thought because it's written down for me to look at again.
Yeah, I mean, and in general, you two with the ZFS book and the books you wrote, it's also making you a little bit of a person who knows everything after you wrote the book. People think that. But I guess you forget everything because you wrote everything in the book to keep your head free of stuff. Yes. There is a certain amount of memory shuffle that goes on, and I have at times gone looking for answers and then found out that the best description is something I wrote in one of the ZFS books. Yeah, there's no one says that you can't refer to your own books. Yep. I try to write the books that I wish I had before I wrote the book.
Yeah. It's been a little bit of a weird experience for me to have, a bunch of these more senior FreeBSD developers who know lots more than I do asking me questions about, am I setting this up right? I'm like,
yes.
You're smarter than me. Why are you asking me? I wrote a book,
yes.
right.
Yes, I had a couple people that I would have thought, a couple people who have worked on the kernel code for ZFS in FreeBSD have come to me and asked me how something works. So why are you asking me? You wrote it. Or you read the code at least. What? Sysadmin is not programming.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a technical side and a very practical application side to it.
Yep. And the software authors have no idea what people really do with their work. They create something, they throw it out in the world, and well, let's see what people do with it.
Yeah.
I mean, OpenSSL started as a project for one guy to learn how to program in C.
It still is like that. Yeah.
I did not say that. But, you know, Bob Beck's presentation on the first 30 days of LibreSSL is highly recommended.
Yeah, I guess if it's just a learning project and you put it out in the world and people start using it, you're already in trouble.
Yeah.
And
But
if you don't
we all
continue maintaining it.
Yes. Yes.
So switching gears here a little bit, you've been to those writing workshops from time to time. Can you tell us a little bit about what these are all about and what happens there?
Well, the Relay D book here is my 29th book. I've written more than a lot of people. And there are very few places I can go. There are many people who will teach writing. Your average English professor at high school or college can't teach me much. In fact, I would say most of those folks are not good at teaching writing. They're good at getting you to write things that they know how to grade, which is a totally different thing. Mm-hmm. So I go out and I study writing. There are very few people who have written more books than me who are teaching writing. So I study with Dean Wesley Smith and Chris Rouge. And between them, they've written 350 books or so.
Wow.
They've won every award in their fields. And so basically, I go out there and for 8 days, they review my work and I write like a maniac.
And writing boot camp.
It is a writing force death march.
Okay.
The workshop's motto is eat, poop, write.
Repeat.
Because that's all you do.
Oh, yeah. Okay, but after the end, you pretty much have new material or just better material?
I've honed my skills. My goal is to make the books readable because, frankly, most computer books are awful. There is a skill to reading a computer book, your average book on the technology, because most computer books are kind of dry and dull. I believe there's a major tech publisher, and it's not No Starch. I work with No Starch, so I'll throw that in. But there's a major tech publisher who has this internal slogan that it's easier to take an engineer and turn them into an author than an author and turn them into an engineer. And that's kind of true, except it's easy. I throw the word mediocre in there a few times. you can make an author a mediocre engineer, or you can make an engineer a mediocre author. And what I really try to make my books better than that. Because there are skills to making a book readable. And that is what I work on honing.
And I guess that's why your books are so popular.
Well, I have a following, yes. But you can look at the history of computer books, and there are standouts. TCP/IP Illustrated, it's highly readable. Knuth, Algorithms in C, classic in the field, solidly written. But the people who can do that are few and far between. And so I have an English degree. I love books. I made my living as a sysadmin. I really am fond of the technology. So I try to put it all together.
It's a good combination, yeah, and a rare combination, I guess.
Well, it can be done, and to be fair, most technical people, once they've written, they may think they want to write a book. But most of them, once they've written a book, change their mind about writing a second. I have to give Alan credit because he wrote 2 with me.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it was one project that we split in half. But I'm fairly sure Alan is not eager to jump into book number 3 with me on his own or at all ever.
Careful what
Not
you say
especially.
now.
Although certain other people are trying to get my help with another book. Although I haven't heard much about it lately, so I don't know if it's actually going to go anywhere.
I'm sorry.
Well, Alan is now writing more
if
source
it's only
code.
a little ZFS section in the book, then it won't be so bad.
Right.
Yeah, it always starts like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little bit.
40,000 words later.
Yeah. Yeah. You poor bastard. But, you know,
go ahead.
You are a joy to work with, just so you know.
He says when he said, I'll never work with you ever again.
No, I would not encourage you to work with me ever again. That's slightly different.
Yes.
Let's just say Alan is too nice for his own good.
You know, it was fun to work
I
together, but like you said,
that.
I think I disrupted your process quite a bit.
Do you know, the books were better as a result. There was, once you were committed, I was able to beat knowledge out of your head that simply couldn't be had any other way. I mean, I could have kidnapped Matt Aarons.
Oh, that would
We
be
should
a
have
story.
considered that a little bit more, honestly. But
That's a whole different crime novel here.
No.
we have to say no because we don't want him to get, on guard about it.
Yeah. So, yes, Matt, we're joking. We would never dream of kidnapping you for a third ZFS book as a co-author. This would never happen.
We promise there are no bear traps behind the podium at BSDCan.
You heard it at BSD Now.
Well, speaking of BSDCan and shifting gears a little bit, so recently you published the novel Git Commit Murder, which is based on an alternate reality version of BSDCan. How did you come up with the idea for that?
Well, do you edit this talk?
No.
The interview? No. Okay, well, then I'm not going to walk over and pick up a copy. I should have had one. How did I come up with it? Because there's a genre of fiction called cozy mysteries. And these take place anywhere. I was coming home from BSDCan last year and came across a cozy mystery that takes place in a cupcake shop. The entire book is in a cupcake shop. It is a cup. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm fond of cupcakes. And there is a certain challenge, I'm sure, to writing a book that takes place entirely in one little shop with a back room. And I'm not knocking it if you like cupcake mysteries, but that's a really specific group of people who are going to buy that book.
Mm-hmm.
And, Get, Commit, Murder is a joke that's been kicking around the internet since Git. And it's I heard it with SVN, and I'm sure somebody said, SCCS Commit Murder. And then I was listening to the last day of BSDCan last year. There was an interesting argument between developers of two different BSDs on locking models in the kernel. How to lock. What's the right way to do it? What's the best way to do it? And we get really intent. We care passionately about doing the right thing. And sometimes sometimes very intelligent people who are highly educated can have widely divergent opinions on the same thing and get really passionate about it. And at the end of that particular discussion, I would not have been shocked to see, well, okay, this is Canada, so nobody was going to pull a gun. But I would not have been shocked to see someone pull out a fresh baked beaver tail and start hitting the other one over the head. So all you need for a murder mystery is passion. And the BSD community, frankly, is some of the most passionate people I know.
Yep.
There is no question that they care a lot. They give up their parts of their lives, their weekends. Some of these open source developers they work all day at these tech jobs that many of them run 60 hours a week or more, 80 hours. And then they go home and they write code to make the world a better place. You don't do that unless you really, really care. Maybe you do your own little standalone thing when you feel like it. And a few people, pull your library into their work, and that's cool. But to work with a large group of other people on a shared common vision takes real passion. And that's what people kill for.
Yeah. That's the negative side, I guess.
Yes. So I would like to end with an passionate plea of my own. You're all smart people. Please don't kill each other.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, I very highly recommend the novel. It is very enjoyable. Even if you've never been to BSDCan, but if you have, you'll get that much more out of the story. If you've been to any tech conference, you'll recognize all the archetypes and everything, and it'll make perfect sense.
Yes, for the record, there are no real people in that book. However, we fall into groups. We fall into archetypes. I met Andrew Fresh and Peter Hessler at Ohio Linux Fest.
I saw the picture.
They spoke. They had the same speech patterns as the two of them. So yes, I took a picture, but there is a reason that there's the stereotype of the chubby, balding computer engineer. Because we are.
Yes. Actually, I think even someone that tuned into the show for, the first time since Benedict joined earlier today in the chat room was like, when I first looked at the screen, I thought Alan just had 2 shots of him.
No. It's the difference is clear. Benedict has a blue shirt. I have a yellow shirt. You have a gray shirt.
Yes.
Obvious difference.
That's how we coordinated. Yeah.
Good.
Well, Benedict had an interesting story about this the other day he sent me. And a viewer wrote in
what was
about,
that?
a viewer from your brother's class wrote in.
Oh, yeah. Right. So he wrote, apparently he liked the show very much, which is nice, of course. And he wrote my brother about, hey, it's nice and a great show. And I love how you, do the interview each week and all this stuff. And my brother was like just forwarding me that message. And it's like, yeah, but he didn't pick the right person to write to that. Like,
so a student in Benedict's brother's class thought it was Benedict's brother that did the show with me.
Well, you never know.
Well, you could do a substitution one week and see if anyone notices.
No one will notice, yeah, because people always, when we were working at the same department where I'm still working, so people were like, did you reply to that mail I sent you? I was like, what, me? You didn't send me an email. And you got mixed up all the time. But if you ask my mother, she's like, you don't look the same at all. How could people mix you up? And I guess it's similar with me and Alan, although we have, other differences. But yeah, there are some similarities that are, they're still there.
So there are no real people in that book. Yes, I stole little bits from people, but I mixed them up. I used archetypes. I'll be doing the same thing when I write a sequel eventually.
Ooh, there's a sequel?
There will be, but cozies are hard.
Mm-hmm.
There's most of my fiction has some degree of violence in it. I suppose I'm just an inherently violent person. And
he's tried to kill me with a butter knife.
Oh, that was for your own good.
Yes.
It's a different way of expressing that violence.
Yes. So, a cozy, you don't get to do any explicit violence. You have to have a certain gentleness to it, and it's real easy to get wrong. So I'm writing a couple things with, flying teeth and severed arms and other fun stuff before going back to cozy.
Okay. Well, kind of an unrelated question, but getting back to BSDCan a little bit, you're on the program committee for BSDCan, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? I was on my first program committee for VBSDCon, which is coming up in a little bit, and we just finished reviewing the first set of papers, and I wonder if you could give us some tips about the process that goes into deciding which papers to accept and so on.
Well, there's paper acceptance at a conference is kind of, no two conferences are alike, even at the same conference.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time at BSDCan, we had trouble getting enough papers to fill slots. And if you had submitted a paper that was adequate or better, we would accept you. And there were some years that we had to track down people and beat proposals out of them. Over time, the conference has gotten more and more popular. And a few years ago, we hit this critical tipping point where we had more good papers than we could accept, which was kind of cool. You realize when you're reading conference proposals that you really don't know anything. I follow the BSD community a lot. And half of the really good proposals we got for BSDCan, I realized I didn't know anything about these people, their project, even though it had been going on a while, even though some of this stuff had been committed. I had no clue this was happening. So that your average conference committee, average member has no idea who you are when you submit. We made a point for BSDCan. We have Peter Hanstein for OpenBSD, and we have GNN for FreeBSD, whose job it is to look at paper from their community. Because in theory, someone who lives mostly in those little bubbles should have a better grip than a generalist like myself. And should know who... Because what we don't want to do is accept a paper that looks really good as a proposal but turns out to be from a known crackpot. Because it happens. Mm-hmm. There are people out there with interesting ideas.
Okay.
And there are people out there who, they create projects without really knowing what they're doing. So, now, mind you, creating a project is a great way to learn what you're doing. So I would encourage you to pick something you don't know anything about and get into it. But that doesn't mean you should be presenting at a conference about it yet. So BSDCan, we pretty much have papers down to a science. Dan has set up a web system that we use to submit papers and review them, and everyone gets a vote. We talk about some border cases. Sometimes we adjust things. For example, this year I had submitted a tutorial on ZFS and a 1-hour talk on the OpenBSD web stack. And I'm willing to give them both, but if I bailed on the tutorial, someone who otherwise couldn't come to BSDCan had submitted a tutorial that was rated like a quarter point less than my ZFS tutorial. So we wanted that person to come, and so we threw my tutorial over the side, but I'm giving it at EuroBSDCon. So you can go to Paris and learn about ZFS. We do a little bit of fiddling with, we want to make sure that all of the projects are pretty well represented. Now, mind you, that doesn't always help. We always have a couple people who, where we know the speaker, we know they'll give a good talk, but they submitted a 2-sentence proposal, and we can't accept that because we have all of these long, detailed proposals that we know that are also from good speakers, and we know we can take those. So what we really need is now it's like a 5-day BSDCan.
Okay.
Yeah,
I would go to
already BSDCan now has 4 concurrent talks instead of 3 to fit a couple more talks.
Right. In. Right. So we want to make sure we represent, that we give opportunities to every BSD project that shows up. We have a bunch of OpenBSD talks, a bunch of FreeBSD. We have, this year we have more NetBSD talks than we have ever had before.
Oh, good.
Which is good, because I remember them apologizing at the end of last year because they had 0 NetBSD talks at BSDCan because they didn't submit any.
Yes. David Maxwell is our NetBSD representative for BSDCan, so I'm going to publicly thank him, and I'm just going to arbitrarily assign him all the credit for getting those papers in. So Thank you, David.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the committee can the committee takes up time, but it's a great view into the community.
And at the end, there's something for everyone, I guess. I think a couple of years ago, you had a blog post about how you, select those talks. What are your criteria?
Yes, and I posted that. I relinked to that on Twitter every time the BSDCan call for papers opens, because I still stand by that as things people screw up on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's every so often to this day, someone submits a paper that says, I have this great idea, but I don't even want to tell the conference committee what the paper is because it's a surprise.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure it's brilliant. And in all fairness, some of those people have gotten that talk accepted at other conferences. Based on I suppose based on their name or contacts or something. But we're getting enough really good papers. We have to be really careful.
Yeah. Like with VBSDCon, the first thing I noticed was like 3 days before the deadline, we didn't have enough talks for a conference. By the deadline, we had twice as many as we had slots. And by 3 days after the deadline, we had a couple more.
Oh.
Yep.
Why does everybody have to wait for the last minute?
Because that is what we do. I made it a point when I decided to go to EuroBSDCon this year. I haven't been to Europe in 4 years, and it is a direct flight from Detroit.
Ooh.
And I have been to Paris twice before. So even if I have they gave me special pills to let me survive the flight without a heart attack. Even if I have some of those lingering in my system when we get down, I'm fairly confident that I will not, end up in the Seine floating on top of my laptop bag.
With a half-written novel in it, yeah.
Yeah. Trying to remember French for help. So we'll give that a try and see. But if I don't make it to the con, you know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think
something at
the more surprising parts I found about being on the program committee were trying to separate my own biases out. Not to, just reject this paper because I think that idea is silly. Maybe if everybody else likes it, but I don't. And then the other one was a particular talk that I really wanted to see, and most other people were more ho-hum about it. And I was like, no, we really, really have to have this one. It's like we need a veto system somewhere.
Yes. Well, and that's part of being in a committee. And that's something a lot of us technical people need to work on just in general. You're part of a team, and your goal is to make the best, most awesome conference ever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, VBSDCon, VeriSign, I believe, sponsors that. And they want to they're doing that to give back to the community, which is great. That's wonderful. I love that. Mm-hmm. But they want it to be a really kick-butt conference.
Yeah, and it's quite a bit different because it's only a single track for the 2 days. So there were only going to be 10 slots, although I think we're going to stretch it to 12 by making people stay later each night.
Okay.
Because, if you came all the way up for the conference, we might as well give you as much content as we can for your dollar.
Well, it's 2 days?
Yeah.
Okay, so, that's a good, solid 8-hour day plus lunch in the middle. It'll be a long day, but you should do that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was very interesting because there were so few talks. I went around and was actually like arm twisting people to submit talks. And then they did. And then we ended up with 3 times
still
as
a
many
little bit
talks as we
broken.
needed, and this became. Then it was like, well, I'm going to feel kind of bad about the people I arm twisted if we don't accept their talk.
Yes. And yet you never know. I want to say there's always that last rush of proposals, except when there isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you never know.
Well, the good thing about it means I don't have to give one.
Yes.
But you'll be you'll be still at the conference because you're part of the committee.
I'll be there, but I won't have to do anything, which will make it twice as much fun.
Yes. Yes. And see, as a member of the BSDCan committee, I feel no obligation whatsoever to help volunteer run the video cameras or pack the bags for attendees, which BSDCan can use those volunteers still. There is a mailing list for BSDCan volunteers. But if you show up the night before the conference, they would love to have you help stuff bags earlier in the day.
Yeah. Or each morning help carry crates of power supplies, power cables and stuff in,
Yes.
or,
Yes.
they're always looking for people to carry things.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it's not a big deal, but helps a lot. Speaking of BSDCan, which is in like 2 weeks or so, can you tell...
The goat buff will be 2 weeks from yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. So if there are any first-timers listening to this one, can you tell us a little bit about what to expect in the newcomers orientation and mentorship session on Thursday?
Well, the night before the conference proper begins, BSDCan proper runs Friday and Saturday with the main talks. There are 2 days of tutorials before that, but if it's your first time at BSDCan or any technical conference, it can be kind of overwhelming. You look around and go, who are these people? You get inundated with about 200 names in the space of 3 minutes. Where is everything? You're probably more interested in one BSD project over another. So what we do with the newcomer session is the night before the conference. If you've been to BSDCan before, we encourage you to show up. If it's your first time at BSDCan, we encourage you to show up. And I talk for about 5 minutes on what BSDCan is and things you should look for. And then we try to attach newcomers to old-timers so that there is someone there that you know and that you can go up to this person and say, help, I'm lost. You can walk up to any of the old-timers and say, hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm mostly interested in this. And the old-timers who have been there before are there specifically to help you. Even if, like last year when we ran this, I saw one of the head FreeBSD guys walking a newbie over to a couple of the OpenBSD guys and basically say, he wants to talk to you. It was a pleasure to meet you. Come by and say hello. And, ask me for questions on the conference, but they're the ones you really are interested in technically. So it is about connecting people together so you don't get lost. Because when you have all of those tracks and all of those people, it can be very overwhelming. And we're trying to make it as easy as possible to wade in and enjoy yourself and fill your brain so you want to come back.
Yeah, it's, I remember my first BSDCan. I think I actually met 4 people out of the 300 and something that were at the conference. I did a very bad job. I was with one person I knew, and I just hung out with them the whole time, and I didn't really do what I should have. But then at my next conference, I met Michael Dexter, and he kind of introduced me to people and helped me branch out and find the right people to talk to get to geek out about the topic I wanted to talk about. And
Yeah.
it made a big difference in getting me all excited into this stuff.
Exactly. And, if we were sociable, we'd be in sales.
Right.
We would not be sitting there typing over our keyboards in uncomfortable chairs until we ruin our backs and have to buy the expensive chairs. But just for a new person coming to the conference, yes.
Yeah, that's the session.
Yes. For a new person coming, I ask the old timers to stand up, and I ask the newcomers to look around, and any one of those people who is standing up is volunteering to guide a newbie. And sometimes it's as simple as, where do I go for dinner? Where is this? Who is that? Who could I talk to about this? You don't have to have all your questions in that first hour, and you better ask them all, or you're sunk and that's it forever. No, you want to know who is eager to help you, because there are folks at any of the BSD conferences who are very happy to hook you up and give you pointers and will happily invite you to dinner. Because the real work of a conference, of course, happens after the committee does all its work and has selected all the papers. The papers are kind of secondary. The real work is in the hallway and in the evenings.
Yeah, well said.
It's the papers are the excuse to get everybody there, but really it's about having the people you want to talk to be in the same room and having much higher bandwidth conversations than you can over the internet.
Yes. I've seen so many conversations online go awry, and you get the two people together in one room for 1 minute, and the whole argument dissolves.
Mm-hmm. And I think it also can just prevent future ones. Just once you've met a person in person, you tend to, when you read their emails, you kind of hear it in their voice and accent when you're reading it.
I have the same.
And it makes
that's true.
A big difference of how you view what they're saying. And suddenly
yes,
they have more benefit of the doubt than they had when they were just some random person on the internet.
Yes. Well, and you learn things like, so-and-so is sarcastic. So-and-so is very serious. When this person speaks, you ought to listen. Because they've been there and they've seen some stuff.
Yeah, for me, the very first time I went to conferences, I didn't know anyone. And then I saw their badges with the names, and it's like, oh, from the writing style and the mailing list posts, I was like, oh, this person is such and such old or has such and such age. And it's like, oh, I didn't know he was so young, or I didn't know he was so old. I had a totally different imagination of what that person would look like.
Yes. And that is one of the wonderful things about the internet. I mean, I think the classic story is Aaron Swartz working on RSS when he was 14, and he was making valuable contributions, and nobody knew that he was 14.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can happen. Yep. Yeah.
So one of the later last-minute things that came up with BSDCan is the work in progress BOF that you're going to have. Could you give us an idea of what this is about, and do a call for people?
Yes. If you're doing something that you think is clever or interesting, but maybe it's not ready for a paper, or maybe you're looking for more help or just more exposure, we're doing a works in progress session. I believe it's Friday at 5 p.m. And you get a period of time, 1 to 5 minutes, You get to stand up in front of the room. There are no other talks running at that time. And so people are either there for the whips or they've left. And you get to present your work, 1 to 5 minutes. I'll be chairing that. I will be enforcing the 5-minute deadline. And I will gleefully cut you off if you run over it. So please rehearse your talk, and I mean it on 5 minutes. So, but this is your opportunity to show your cool new thing. And send your proposal to WIP at bsdcan.org. I need slides before midnight the day before. And tell us what you're doing. Maybe you can either get some help or maybe other people can save you a lot of trouble.
Yeah, this session is always very good at BSDCan, so I look forward to the one at BSDCan because there'll be a lot more people.
Hopefully. I have received 0 proposals so far.
Oh, well, I'll send one then.
Of course, it's nowhere near the deadline, so I'm not expecting any.
Yeah, there's still time.
And
so midnight the day before, you'll get lots.
Oh, yeah. I fully expect that I'll be flooded with them and have to choose. So include your time period. If you need 2 minutes, I would much rather have 32-minute talks than 12 5-minute talks. Mm-hmm. So this is about exposure.
Yeah, like you said, being on the programming committee, there's all these little things people are working on that you didn't know about, and this is a great way to just get a very quick brain dump of this.
Yep, and I'm the one choosing. So if you're submitting, cater to my biases.
Gelato.
I can be bought. Maybe not for a whip slot, but just generally I can be bought.
Okay, yeah, we'll look forward to that one. So going back to a little bit to the whole author and book writing thing, have you ever thought about branching off into a new genre like children's books or medieval fantasy novels?
I try real hard not to. I have some large fiction projects I wish to complete. And the sad thing is, readers don't cross genres very easily. I have a few people who read everything I write. And I adore those people, just so you know. So people like Josh and Kurt, thank you, Adam. But the problem is I can name them all, and that's not a career.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to get a bit of a name for science fiction. I'm starting to get a bit of a name for mystery and crime. If I branch out and start doing other things, then each of those requires its own care and feeding. And I'm committing to keep doing that to build a name. Now, I have done some strange things. I wrote a romance novella that was pretty well received.
See?
So the odds of me going back to that are not great, but I learned a lot doing it. Because writing is kind of like anything in computers. You learn by doing. You learn by failing. You learn by screwing up again and again and again until finally the only thing that's left is how to do it right.
Right.
So,
yeah.
And, I think if I wrote a children's book, really, it would be full of flying teeth and severed limbs. And kids are not, no. No.
That wouldn't carry over well.
No.
But just remembering that there's postmortem on debugging some problem with Python on Mac and BSD or something, and it was written up in medieval fantasy style. Do you remember that one? That was very humorous.
That was brilliant. I was jealous.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see if I can find that and send you the link, because you should put that in the show notes.
Yeah. It's in our show notes from the episode where I read most of it.
Oh, you did?
But that was a long time ago, so we should find it again, because I can't even direct you to which episode that was off the top of my head.
Right. It was brilliant. Great. Yes. Sadly, I don't have the link here, but dear author of that, it was brilliant. Mm-hmm. I am jealous. So, I'm going to stick with the genres and fields I have now. There's enough computer topics out there to keep me busy the rest of my life. I will do another Git murder book. Probably set this one at a conference much like Penguicon in Detroit.
Mm. There you go.
Because I can... The BSD community isn't that large. If I start killing people left and right...
They will be missed, yeah.
They will be missed, yeah.
Yes.
And
plus, Penguicon has a broader focus on a couple different areas, and it would allow you to cross some of those together in very interesting ways.
Yes, it would. And they're just as full of archetypes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we should drag Michael Lucas to FOSDEM one time.
Oh, that would be amazing.
Entirely
a whole different
set
scale.
Of archetypes. All of the Linux archetypes.
Yes, I'm sure
free
there.
Archetypes.
I've been to more than one Linux event. I was a few weeks ago. I went to Kansas for Kansas Linux Fest. Nicely run con. They even gave me a shirt.
Mm-hmm.
So
see?
There's my. Yep, Kansas Linux Fest. There you go. So I'm trying to do one new event a year. Not add a recurring event, just something different every year.
Well,
because I'm supposed to shamelessly...
interesting because it's mostly developer focused, right? It's the Free Open Source Software Developers European Meeting.
Yes.
And there's over 3,000 people and no registration.
Yep.
It's free.
Oh, and no registration.
No registration. I think because fire code means they couldn't actually legally have that many people in the building at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Or something. But it's also because you have the privacy nuts and so on, so nobody knows what your name is. There's no money. You just show up.
Well, I'm not a developer.
Right.
And that is sadly something I could not fly to Europe on my own dime, I'm afraid. Not right now.
But if you wanted to stand behind the FreeBSD Foundation table and explain FreeBSD to Linux people,
I'm sure something can be
That's
arranged.
what I was doing last year.
They probably would.
Yes,
I try to avoid tapping the foundation for sponsorship because I'm not a FreeBSD contributor. Strictly speaking, I am a commercial exploiter of BSD software. And having said that, I did request them to sponsor me for BSDCan in England.
Mm-hmm. Well,
because I'm working on the absolute FreeBSD.
Yeah, I think we're getting the good side of the bargain there. So,
yeah, that's another conference where murders can happen in the English countryside.
The English countryside is the traditional place for murders.
Right.
You know, I've read a lot of Agatha Christie. Yes, exactly. Go watch BBC TV. Midsummer Murders, Father Brown, all of that good stuff. And they're also genteel about it, and they're scones. I think a good murder would really be nice at BSDCan.
Yes.
What you need there is someone. The trick is you're going to have to murder someone who's not integral to the community.
Right.
No, not a developer. Maybe someone who's just showing up to look around and take notes.
We'll make a list.
Which castle are you sleeping in?
Yeah.
Which of the castles are you sleeping in?
I don't have room reservations yet.
Okay.
I really need to do that before BSDCan.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, if you start a new conference, please make it more than one letter different from an existing conference.
Yes.
Thank you.
Especially sequential letters. That's really pushing it.
M and N. Come on, Robert. I know it's clever and all, but what were you thinking?
Yeah, you can tell him in person.
We mostly just call
will.
it Cambridge, but yes.
But renaming a conference after it has been established for a couple of years is, much more difficult.
I'm
We'll
not
see.
the one who has to do the work, so I don't care.
I think this
Also
year
true.
the designated residence is St. Catherine's. I stayed there 2 years ago.
Okay.
It's actually a castle.
It is. Oh.
Yes.
I'm actually going to be taking my wife with me. We've never been to England.
So you probably won't stay in a dorm then.
Probably not. But what I really need to do is contact them and ask if they have anything for that.
Yes.
Because it's England. I'm sure they've experienced this kind of problem before in the, 700-year history of Cambridge?
Cambridge
guess they're prepared,
University
Yeah.
turned 800 years old a couple of years ago when we were there.
How foolish of me.
It's
Well,
older than
I'm
the country I live in.
yeah, I'm an ignorant American. I know nothing.
Well, was there anything else you wanted to talk about before we let you go?
I think I've sucked up an hour and a half of your time.
1 hour and
So-
18 minutes so far.
1 hour and 18 minutes, yes. And
12
your
more to go.
listeners are going to kill you.
No.
So
They're going to
the
gobble it
smart
up.
thing to do is...
Not more than usual.
Okay. No, just I'll see you. And if you're watching this, I should see all of you people out there in the World Wide Web. Yes, show up to BSDCan.
Yep. Or EuroBSDCon.
EuroBSDCon. Show up at a BSD conference on your continent. If there isn't one on your continent, start one.
Yep,
If you
that's
live
a
in
good idea.
Antarctica,
There
If
are
you live
free
in
BSD
Antarctica-
developers in Antarctica right now. I know this for a fact. So
Arctic BSDCon, it's a nice name.
yeah, make this happen. Thank you, guys.
So we hope you enjoyed this interview with Michael W. Lucas, which went a little bit long, but it's nevertheless, it was a good one.
yes, it was
And-
good to get to talk to Michael.
Yeah. And we'll have plenty of stuff to talk with him at BSDCan, of course. And next thing is we're going into our news section. But before that, we are talking about our sponsor this week, which is IX Systems.
Yes. So you should head over to ixsystems.com/BSD Now and check out their ultimate guide to buying a new server for open source. You know, BSD is the focus, but you can run Linux on it if you really want to. They will help you with that begrudgingly. But, you know, the experience there is really more than you expect. You know, you talk to them when you're talking to a sales engineer, that the word engineer isn't used loosely there. They actually know about the hardware and you know, they're supposed to be the expert, not you. So you just tell them, I need a server that does this, or I'm trying to solve X problem, and they'll help you decide which hardware is the right one. You don't need to tell them, they'll provide advice to you.
Yeah, and they
makes
will
a
not
big
just,
difference.
they will pretty much tell you what you need and not what you what they think is best for you. Because the idea is some vendors are like, oh, you need this, this, and this, not because you need it, because it is useless for your specific use case, but they want to sell you stuff. IX Systems is not like that. they will tell you exactly what you need and what you don't need. They will also recommend certain stuff that will work together that you haven't thought about, because they have the expertise in knowing which hardware components combine better with each other, like driver support and performance, and all that stuff has been in their knowledge base, and they will tell you which stuff will work best for your use case.
Yeah, the big thing is because they specialize in servers for open source, they know what works with what, and open source is the first thing they do. Unlike your other vendors where it's all Windows and then maybe they also runs Linux. Anyway,
they're
over there,
also,
check them out. Tell them we sent you and they will treat you extra nice.
Yeah. Okay, so in our news roundup, we have a little write-up, or it's actually a long write-up from our friendly, grumpy BSD guy called Peter Hanstein. Called The Name of Sane Email, Setting Up OpenBSD's SpamD with Secondary MXs in Play. So this is a bigger article. Of course, this is something you might want to check out if you're running a mail server or also are being targeted by spam in general, but because who isn't? You want to check out that because there's a little write-up about how this is going to work on the receiving side if you are being targeted by spammers and also want to protect yourself a little bit better against that.
Yeah. So he starts off by saying, recipes in our field are all too often offered with little or no commentary on how the user understands the underlying principles of how the configuration actually works, right? They just tell you what lines to put in the file, but not necessarily why or what that's going to do. And so at that point, you're just copying and pasting random configurations and commands from the internet, not actually learning how to do it.
Yeah.
So he says, to counter this trend and offer some free advice on common configurations, here's my recipe for a sane mail setup. It says, mailing lists can be fun. Most of the time, the discussion on lists like OpenBSD-MISCs are useful, entertaining, or both. But when your battle with spam fighting technologies ends up blocking your source of information and entertainment, like in the case of a recent thread where SpamD graylisting was blocking the mailing list, frustration levels can run high, and in the process of merging, some readers place too much trust in a certain website that provides barely commented recipes rather than actually teaching people how to do it. So he breaks it down into 4 basic steps to set up a primary backup mail server system with good anti-spam. The first is to make sure that your MXs, both the primary and the secondary, are able to receive mail for your domain. That's got to work before you can do anything else.
Yeah.
But then it's to set up the content filtering on all the MXs. A trick a lot of spammers did is that the secondary MX usually didn't have as good of anti-spam, if any, so they would purposely talk to the secondary first, and then it would proxy all the spam to the primary, and because it comes from the trusted secondary server, it would allow it through. And then setting up SpamD on all of those MXs, and then to actually synchronize configuration between your SpamDs. Because if, like we just mentioned, if one of them is weaker than the other, then you could actually run into trouble where they'll send the spam to the weaker ones because more of it will get through.
Exactly. And when one has detected a spam, you want to make sure that the secondaries will also flag that same message as a spam message. And then pretty much it goes into the details of how to set that up. Steps 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, these are basic steps. If you want to go even further, you can supplement your gray listing and with publicly available blacklists, but also set up gray trapping. And there's a part for that at the end. This is once you've made sure that your mail exchangers will accept mail for your domains, in checking that the secondaries do actually receive and spool the mail. So part of this process is actually purposely turning off your primary and sending yourself some email and making sure it actually comes into the secondary, waits, and then when you turn your primary back on, is actually delivered. Once all that works, then you can start with content filtering. So it provides links to a couple of different configurations and man pages and the book of PF and all the different bits you might need. They say at this point, you are more likely than not to discover any difference in your filtering setup between the hosts that accept and deliver mail will let spam through the weakest link. So you want to tune accordingly, or at least until you're satisfied that you have a fairly functional configuration. As you've read by now from various sources that he cited earlier in the article, you need to set up rules to redirect traffic to the spam daemon. So they actually look at what the PF rules would look like, and he provides one set that uses the quick keyword to make hosts on the no spamd and the spamd whitelist actually go directly to the mail server and not go through spamd. But then he has a different configuration here that does it differently, and one that actually uses queues to put rate limits on the incoming emails.
Pretty much straightforward from the PF syntax.
Yes, well, they are also from Peter Hanstein, who's the author of the Book of PF. So, you can definitely expect good instructions on how to use PF there.
Yeah.
He also runs through the setup where all outgoing email goes through spamd, so that the emails you're sending, the people you're sending them to, will end up on the whitelist, so that replies to your email won't have to wait through the gray list. They'll be able to come through right away, which is, important if you send an email, you want to get a reply right away rather than have it delayed. Whereas incoming mail from other people, you are willing to put up with the delay in order to
check
deal
for
with the spam.
spam.
But when
You rarely
have
reply
conversation
to
with
a
people,
spam
it's
message.
nice to have both.
Yeah, indeed.
So he, in addition to the steps to set up your spamd.conf for both the primary and secondary, he also provides a copy of his to give you an idea of what works for him. He says the fourth and final step required for a spamd setup with a backup mail exchanger is to set up synchronization between the spamds. The synchronization keeps your gray lists in sync and transfers information on any gray trapped entries to the partner spamd. As the spamd man page explains, the synchronization options, lowercase y and uppercase y, are command line options to spamd, and it shows how to configure those with rc.conf.local. With those settings in place, you'll have more or less completed all 4 steps of the recipe, but if you want to keep going, it talks about configuring logging so that your spamd logs will go to a separate file, which can make it easier to reconcile the logs between the primary and the master, the primary and the secondary. But if you want, you can also set up the gray trapping. So this is basically creating specific inboxes on your domain that do not exist. And if anybody tries to send an email to them, you'll block that and basically auto blacklist them. And this can help you detect a lot of different types of spammers. He says gray trapping can be fun. You can search for posts on his site tagged with that. He talks about it extensively. To get you started, he also offered a published list of trap addresses. So you just want to replace his domain with yours in that. Just got links to that. And a nice readable version or a machine readable version. And he says, but good luck with setting up your mail server.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of links in there.
Updates to this post over the years, including one just recently as he was working on his BSDCan PF and networking tutorial that if you might be able to take at BSDCan if you're there.
Yeah, so the whole article is a good read with a lot of links to other sites and getting into more detail. So you might want to check that out and maybe apply it to your mail setup. Yeah, I think we should get Peter Hanstein on a show maybe in a future episode to talk about
We've
this
had
setup.
him once before, but we should get him again for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So, onto the Beastie Bits.
Yeah, so the first one is status of FreeBSD's Capsicum on Linux. So that's an interesting turn of events here. So,
yes, so this has been going on for a while, but Google was sponsoring originally the work on Capsicum to get it into Linux because they wanted to be able to use it for the Chrome browser. But they have an update where you can see a bunch of stuff that's actually been merged, and it basically talks about their approach to trying to get some of the same functionality that FreeBSD has, and some recipes. They even have some autoconf scripts for people writing an application so that they'll be able to use Capsicum on both Linux and FreeBSD with the same code.
Yeah, so this looks nice, and I guess there's some progress to be made still, but it's coming along fine, from what I read.
Yeah, they have a not most up to date, but reasonably up to date list of some of the tools on FreeBSD that have been converted to use Capsicum, and then the list of tools that they've done on Linux as kind of a proof of concept.
Oh yeah, nice. That's good. Then people can compare and see whether their favorite utility has already been converted. Okay, next up, how to build a gateway from 1979. It's been a while.
Probably something akin to the first article on how to build a TCP/IP router. But most of these basics still apply. It's very interesting to look at stuff this old and see how it turns out the IP protocol is basically the same as it was then, and it still works just fine.
Yeah, it's old but not stale, pretty much. And so it is. It starts with a little table of contents here, and begins basically by introducing the whole topic, and then continues into how the whole gateway stuff works, the initialization, and how the connectivity is determined to networks and to neighbors. And then, it's going into a little bit more detail then, but it's pretty much a nice write-up with some formulas in the middle. And for people who want to do a little bit of more history in that area, this article is a good way to start.
Yeah.
In RFC style, the network packets and all that is displayed, and it's a nice thing. There's a lot of stuff at the end as well with links. Oh no, there are no links, but there's how the whole system basically works together, and what actually makes it work, and the connections it has to other things that you basically take for granted these days.
Yep. So our next one is an article over at BSD Magazine. They have a Linux escapee, Hamza Shaiken, or Sheikh, has an article on why they use FreeBSD. And it talks about their journey starting with Red Hat, and then Red Hat Enterprise Linux in the 2000s, going forward, and walking through why they ended up on FreeBSD. A big part of that was ZFS, and jails and dtrace and so on. But apparently part of it was BSD Now. Have you heard of that?
Oh, really?
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I heard about it, but I never watched it. So, yeah, and that pretty much is the start of the journey. And he goes into a little bit more detail with what he tried out, and basically what's running currently, what's working, and some of the things he experienced along the way. So people who are interested in maybe switching as well might want to read that one and start their own journey into the BSDs.
Yep. Then we have a post from the Open Group, the people in charge of the POSIX standard, and they have Unix is as relevant as ever, explaining why Unix and the POSIX specification and so on are still important and why they still matter today. Interesting, quick little read.
And last one is the upcoming Summer of Code. Oh no, the Summer 2017 FreeBSD Foundation events. So this is a blog post on the FreeBSD Foundation website, and we pretty much listed everything that we are going to be at. So events, conferences, and all these small and big events that are of interest to BSD users and also other open source minded folks. And the first one is pretty much the FreeBSD Developer Summit at BSDCan, which we are experiencing right now, because it's right now. We're sitting basically right in it, and that's also sponsored by the FreeBSD Foundation, which is great stuff to not only connect the developers to each other, but also to the companies and the users and everyone that's using FreeBSD. Then it continues with the main BSDCan conference, which we are having in a couple of days. and continues into the 12th Open Source China Open Source World Summit, which is new. This was guarded by our new contacts that we have with Kylie Liang, because she's now on our FreeBSD Foundation board, and that pretty much allowed us to get into that space. Then we'll sponsor or be at the 2017 SN Hackathon in July, and also the 2017 Usenix Annual Technical Conference in Santa Clara. And we have a little bit more details on the blog post, so check that out, and especially try to go to these conferences if you can, and meet the foundation there and say hi.
Yep. And then if you're a developer, also don't forget the FreeBSD Dev Summit in Cambridge will be, the 2nd through the 4th of August?
Yeah, it's the 2nd to the 4th of August, and we also, so the FreeBSD Foundation has on their travel grant website the deadlines if you are applying for a travel grant, so you can see when these will, when they start and when they end, so you can plan a little bit more ahead of whether you want to apply for a travel grant and go to one of these conferences by a sponsorship of the FreeBSD Foundation.
And we'd also like to thank Tarsnap for sponsoring this week's episode. You can go over to tarsnap.com/BSD Now and give them $5 and start doing backups. It's really that easy. You sign up for an account, you put some money in it, and you start backing up. The nice thing is there's never a surprise bill because you put the money in first and you use it up and you get a warning when you run out. You're never going to get a surprise bill because you don't owe more money than you put in the first place.
Yeah.
You have complete control over your costs for your backup, which can be important.
And another important step is that your backups are securely encrypted in the cloud. You're the only person who has the key for it. No one else can access it, not even the owner or developer of Tarsnap.
Make sure not to lose that key, like a certain someone we know who lost their key and wasn't able to restore their backups.
Yeah, no help there. There's no way to retrieve that key. Oh well, but the files are secure. No one else can access those. That's what Tarsnap is doing, and making sure that people who store that data, whatever it is, on their machines with Tarsnap, everything is backed up securely. No one else can access that except you who still hold the key.
Yep. Well, that's it for this week. So we'll see you next week. We'll be back with a regular full episode. Not that this one was really that lacking. It's going to be...
Yeah, but you have the interview with Michael Lucas, and everything. We will report that we had a nice conference at BSDCan. I can say that already. And we'll give you the latest that we learned there and give you the greatest news that we'll uncover there.